We were speaking about the great energy which exists within the Torah learning, and even more than one does mitzvahs, because Torah, it's not only a limb of Hashem, this is Hashem, as we express the expression Masnisa Malka. So the Mishnah itself is the king, and when you attach yourself, Mishnah is just as an example. If it's Gemara, if it's Chumash, if it's Tanakh, the Shulchan Aruch, Halacha, obviously Tanya, which means every part of Torah, rather, right? So there's the including every dimension of Torah. It is the Melech himself. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. So when you connect to it, you connect to the core essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And as we mentioned,
just to give a quick background, we're talking about how Torah, learning Torah brings you closest to God versus doing mitzvahs.
Even doing mitzvahs, even in comparison to doing mitzvahs.
How actually learning it using your intellect actually brings you closer. They're explaining why that is.
Right. So I will just suggest, for example, those general, and I would hear in the previous classes, just to take home this. You can see, because we're middle of a chapter over here, and you can see the follow up. But what we're saying over here is that in V'lei Eid, he says, moreover, Yichudam, the oneness of the level where Torah exists, hence your experience and the connection which you connect to when you learn Torah is B'yeser Se'ez, B'yeser Oz, is with greater strength and with greater intensity and greater strength, Mi Yichud Ein Sof Baruch Hu B'Elam Misalyenim, as the connection of God's infinite light in the supreme worlds. Why? Mi'acha sheratzin ha'elin hu b'gilui mamosh b'nefesh u'levusha ha'isik b'teira sharihu ha'teira atzma. Because the supreme desire of HaKadosh Baruch Hu stands in a state of revelation and a state of manifestation in the soul and in its garments, the one who occupies himself in Teira, because that is the Teira himself. Like this. We gave the example. We gave the example as the ultimate, when a person does many things in order to get to the ultimate goal. We gave an example, someone is in business, is a merchant, and he goes to a very far place. We gave the example, he goes to the Far East, he goes to Hong Kong as an example, which is a city of commerce, classically known as a city of commerce. He goes and he has to meet somebody, so he does many things in between. And he makes reservation on a plane, and he travels on the plane, and he goes into a hotel, and he makes sure to be here, be there, in order to sustain himself. For what reason? In order to get to the end game, which is to meet this merchant for those 2 hours that he has to meet and see the product and sign the deal and so on and so forth. So he's doing many things till he reaches that. What is the whole reason for all the other things he's doing? The only reason he's doing everything he's doing is in order to reach that point.
That's the real.
So that point was in his mind in the very beginning. That's who he. That's that. In other words, you look in what he's in his sense of accomplishment. The ultimate goal, it says, for example, Sof Ma'aseh b'machshavat Tchila. The end game was in the person's in the most initial and in deepest parts of the person's mind. The end game. What does he have in mind? He has in mind that he's going to do that business transaction with that individual in this very far place. So all the other things that he's in between is just external in order to reach and get to that place. So the same thing as we said, we brought it a little bit in a different context. The same thing, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem created the world. He created the supreme worlds and he created the lower worlds. He created the Gan Eden and Elam Haba. And eventually every world evolves from a higher and more spiritual world, and ultimately creates this physical world. And what's the purpose of creating this physical world? There he can give the Torah, and there he can give mitzvahs, because mitzvahs you cannot put on tefillin with a soul which is divested from a body. It has to be a soul which is in a body, which has that physical hand. That's where you can put on tefillin. So he has to create the physical world. He has to create physicality. He has to create the person, which is a physical person. But what does he have in mind? That his mitzvahs, which is the core essence of God, and that's what he has. That's what he's all about, because we said this is part of the Melech, this is part of the King, should ultimately come to fruition. In other words, should come to a state of development and come to a state of a state of actualization, in other words, should be implemented Hashem's plan that this should be this person should take the tefillin and put on the tefillin. So he had to do all the other things.
As that business meeting that he met.
Right. In other words, you understand. Right. So everything in between, even the most important parts in between, you check into the 5-star hotel, and if you think about it, sometimes the 5-star hotel seems to be more exciting than meeting this guy in this kind of dumpy-looking alleyway, right? But it's irrelevant what are the externalities of it. The question is, what do I have in mind? Because if this guy was around my block in the West, I would never check into a beautiful first-class plane or first-class seat on a plane. I would never check into a first 5-star hotel. So these things seem to be more of a superior qualitative experience, but as opposed to even doing that transaction. But it's not what I have in mind. So the same thing, certainly Olam Haba, Gan Eden, these are more world of quality. Is superior in style, in texture, if you will. In other words, this is a spiritual world as opposed to this physical world. It's low, it's crass, it's gross in a way that by mere nature, it's physical. Means to say it's expresses the ultimate expressions of finitude and limitation, as opposed to a very spiritual and high and lofty world like Olam Haba, the world to come, or Gan Eden as an example. There's many other worlds, infinite amounts of worlds, but we're using the type of this contrast, for example, this physical world and the Olam Haba, or Gan Eden. But as much as Gan Eden, a much more spiritual world, what did Hashem have in mind when He created Gan Eden? And eventually, everything should evolve until this physical world should come about, and the person should be in this physical world and put on the tefillin. So the tefillin, the energy exists in the tefillin. As we said in the previous class as well, that between tefillin and the Torah learning is much even deeper within the connection with a Yid, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even more than the tefillin. So again, we were this one, because those who, if you're here the first time, you could look in the previous papers to see what is the superiority of learning Torah over doing mitzvahs, but which is we're not dealing with this particularly right now. We're dealing with perhaps both, doing mitzvahs and learning Torah. Obviously, Torah is a step ahead, but the connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. In this case, we're dealing with learning Torah. You're dealing with the core essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the energy which you're connecting to is way deeper and way loftier and way grander. Again, you're dealing qualitatively than all the worlds which Hashem created. Because the world Hashem created, maybe even the superior worlds, they're only a means to an end. The end is Sof Maseh. But that Sof Maseh, Machshavat Chila, that is the core essence of God, and the world are just a expression. It's a way where Hashem extended a certain energy to create the world. So Hashem extends an energy to create these worlds. May they be superior worlds as well, but it's Hashem extending a certain energy to create the world. While when you learn Torah, you're not connecting to a certain energy which comes from Hashem, you're connecting to the essence of Hashem. So that's what he says. The yichud, the unity of the Jew who learns Torah is much greater than the way Hashem connects with these supreme worlds. What is your connection? Gets back to the business. Where is your mind and soul? You could appreciate this 5-star hotel which you're staying in Beijing as an example. You could appreciate it very much, but that's not what you have on your mind. You have on your mind one thing, that transaction should go. So you go to sleep with it and you wake up in the morning with it, together with deriving pleasure of that particular hotel that you're staying. You're not sleeping out in the woods. You're not sleeping out in the forest, or in the street. You're appreciating a nice hotel, like we say. Gan Eden is a very much of a spiritual world, a world which is an appreciated. It is a world which is causes much appreciation, and even for God, it says a place Hashem comes and expresses mishtashea. It says Ima Tzadikim, He expresses certain expressions of delight together with tzaddikim, because it's all a spiritual world, Gan Eden. Like the person, again, lahavdil, in the marshal, the person appreciates a good hotel in the place where he's staying. But that's not what he has his mind on. Even when he's appreciating the hotel, he has his mind that the next day he's going to go out to this alleyway and strike that deal. And the same thing. There are Aliyainim by definition. They're supreme worlds. Supreme world means it's more of a godly world. It's more of a refined world. It's more of a spiritual world. But that's not the core essence of Hashem. It's a expression where Hashem creates this world in order eventually that this physical world should evolve. So it's just an energy which comes from Hashem to create the world, while the Torah itself, mitzvah itself, that is Hashem. So the oneness and the unity comes, the oneness and unity which exist, or which the Yid connects and becomes one, the level he becomes one with, or the manner he becomes one with Hashem, is with greater strength, greater intensity, more than the oneness of Hashem, where the way Hashem unites himself with these spiritual worlds. Because Miyacha Sherotz and Hashgaelin will read these words again, who begili mamosh the nefesh ulvoshel ha'iskim betela, because the Ratzon Elyon, which means the supreme desire of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is begili mamash, is completely revealed and stands in total manifestation in the soul and in its garments. In other words, the garments of the soul, which learns Torah, because Sharei Hu HaTorah Atzmi, God is the Torah. And b'chol ha'olam, as opposed to all the worlds, even Elyonim, even the supreme worlds, mikablim chayusim me'er v'chayis hanimshech me'atera. They receive their light and their life and their energy from the Torah. Because Hashem is the Torah, so they receive their life from Hashem, so they receive their life from the Torah. They are not the level of the Torah. They are not the core essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because the Torah is Ritzayne, the Torah is Chachmas, Baruch, the Torah is Hashem's desire, the Torah is Hashem's will, the Torah is Hashem's wisdom. Like it says, Kulam Chachmas, so that Hashem created everything with Chachma, which means everything is just an emanation of Chachma. It's emanation of Hashem's wisdom. It's emanation of Hashem's desire. While Torah is Hashem's desire, Torah is Hashem's wisdom. As we mentioned again, we brought the famous Rambam that Hashem's wisdom and Hashem's kul echad, it's all one. So while Torah is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, all the other worlds, and again even the supreme worlds, receive their energy from the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which means they receive their energy from the Torah. They are not the Torah. They are not Hashem. Or they are not Hashem, rather. We go on and we go v'im kein chochma she'atera l'mayluk mekulam. So because kulam b'chochma, they receive their energy from the chochma, so the chochma itself is higher and transcendent of all. All means to say even the Olam Yisrael, the supreme world. V'hi here it's saying Yisbarach Hanikar Sev Kolal mean, and this when we say about Torah, this is Hashem's desire, which is called Seviv Kolam. And if you remember, we learned this in the past. There is the all-encompassing force of Hashem, and the way Hashem is the energy which invests in Olamot. Which, if you look at it in the term, right, in Lashon HaKodesh, Memale Kol Almin and Seviv Kol Almin. Surrounding
and filling, right?
Right, filling in the world, and Seviv Kol Almin is transcending. Encompassing the world. Encompassing the word sovev. It just encompasses. What's the difference of an encompassing force or a force which invests? The encompassing force, that's the core essence of the life and energy. The filling, when you fill, means to say you're already dealing with the recipient, because you have to fill in according to the nature and the makeup of the recipient. There's a classic example given. You have the generator, which stands out of the city, and then you have the wires, the way they're contained. It contains the energy of the generator, and then eventually ends up as an outlet in front of the person's house. So you take the toaster, we spoke about this quite a few times. You take the toaster, put it in the outlet. It does its job. Take the same toaster and try to put it into the generator, it'll probably explode. And why so? Isn't this the energy which is the same energy which is coming? The energy which is in the outlet is the same energy which is in the generator. Why here would explode and here would be able that it works fine and well? And is a toaster or any other electronic appliance? The answer, because there it's the core energy. The way the core energy is for itself by itself. It's not there to feed or to entertain or to deal with something which is inferior than it itself. This is the chayes, this is the energy. So it's not geared, it's not contained, it doesn't deal with this, with something inferior of it. It doesn't deal with something that has to fit into it. It's just the core chayes, the core energy itself. So you can't take a toaster which has its particular makeup and limited makeup and stick it into the generator and expect it to work. It'll explode, it'll probably ruin. Because this is the core energy itself. As opposed to the energy which flows into the system and ultimately ends up to be your outlet in your home. That's already an energy which is contained. That's already an energy which is dealing with something else, which is the recipient. In this case, it's you or your toaster, which need just a limited amount of energy in order to appreciate that bread as it would be toasted. Or, if you want a little more direct, the toaster itself has its limitations, how much energy it could perceive, or rather, how much energy it could hold, how much energy it could tolerate, rather, how much energy it could comprehend. So the energy which flows already into the system and ends up into the outlet, that's the energy which comes from the generator. So it's the same generator which is producing the energy. But the energy, the generator itself, that's the core energy. It's not meant to give to something else. It just is. That is the energy without dealing with this something else. When the energy has to come and deal with something else, then it's confined, then it limits itself. In the end, it limits itself to such an extent, it comes just a very small little power behind that cord in the wall, and becomes the outlet, and it's so little energy coming truly from the generator. But the way the generator already is dealt with, it contracts its great energy, and eventually just a minimal comes into that cord, which becomes the outlet. Therefore, you could put the toaster in, and it'll work. So the energy is the same. The only thing here, it's the energy the way it's on core levels, without dealing, without doing anything. This is it. And that's why it's called Sovev Kol Almin. It doesn't mean it's Sovev, it's surrounding world. It's quite on the contrary. The level of Sovev Kol Almin, this is the Chai, this is the energy of all the Olamot. It's simply like you go into the same example we give. What is the energy which is warming up that bread? What is energy which is making the toaster work? It's only the generator. There's no other energy like someone's going to say, so what do I need the generator for? If what's really making the toaster work is the energy which comes to the outlet, so who needs the generator out of the city? Cut off the generator and I use the cord. Which is a silly thing to say. Because if you don't have the generator, nothing's going to come through the cord. The generator is the chayes, is the energy. The only thing is, it's too powerful. It's just the energy the way it is for itself, by itself, without dealing with something else. And therefore, it's too potent, it's too powerful. And therefore it's called Sovev. Sovev means to say, it's there, but it doesn't enter dealings with the details, the specificities of this which it's trying to trying to provide the energy. So to say that I don't need the generator because I have the cord is silly, because the whole reason why there's energy in the outlet is because of the generator. In the same token, you can't stick the toaster into the generator because that's the core essence. While the energy which comes through the system, that's already a finite type of energy, a limited type of energy, which deals with the details of the recipient, in this case the toaster. Similarly, Sovev Kol Almin, Rabbi explains in the 40th chapter, doesn't mean that it just surrounds. It's not surround. That is the core essence of everything in creation. The only thing is it doesn't invest in creation. Like the generator stands out of the city, doesn't deal with the details within creation, with the details of the electrical appliances. Similarly, the core essence of God is the way He stands for Himself, by Himself. That is God. Before He starts Mimale Kol Almin, filling in the details of worlds. So if you think about the difference between the energy which flows in detail as opposed to the core essence, in this case we say the generator, the difference is infinite. And I don't mean to say true infinite in the way, because infinity doesn't really find its place in any form or fashion in this finite world. But if you think about it, the difference is enormous. This is the way the energy is for itself, by itself, and this is the way the energy is starting to conform to something which is other than it itself. So the Alter Rebbe says, so that's the difference of Sovev Kol Almin and Memale Kol Almin. Sovev Kol Almin is the all-encompassing force, the core essence of God, while Memale Kol Almin is the way already Hashem is filling in. He's dealing with the recipient. According to the recipient, for example, Olam Ruchniyoter, more of a spiritual world, gets this dosage. Like, even you're dealing with electricity, the electricity which you plug in a washing machine and a dryer, for example, it's a thicker outlet. Because the energy which is designed for the dryer or washing machine is a thicker energy. The energy which goes to the toaster is a thinner energy, a smaller, thinner plug. Because this is all in the world Memale Kol Almin. There's a spiritual world that gets more energy, a less spiritual world gets less energy, till this physical world, which is the lowest in the whole Seder Ishtal Shaluta, we call it, in the whole chain and evolvement of world. This is the lowest world. It probably receives less. And even in this world, there's differences. There's the energy which the orange receives. That's why it looks like an orange. You have the energy which the apple receives. That's why it looks like an apple. That's why it tastes like an apple. And there's all these multiple different lines and different ways how the Eibush does Memale Kol Almin. Where does Memale Kol Almin begin? Not only when you're dealing with apples and oranges. The Memale Kol Almin begins all the way back, wherever there's an Olam, whenever there's a world which has to receive a Kodesh Baruch Hu's world. What?
What's the term that you just used?
Memale Kol Almin. We just said Memale Kol Almin, the way Hashem fills, Memale.
Oh, okay.
So where does Memale Kol Almin begin? It doesn't begin when you're dealing with the oranges and apples. It begins, you can go all the way back, wherever there's an Olam, where there's any world which has a definition, and has a description or a definition. So and a particular style of makeup, that's where the Memale Kol Almin kicks in. So when you're dealing with Olam Haba or Gan Eden, it's a very spiritual world, but it's Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. It has its limitations. It's a world. Olam Eloshin, we said last week, Eloshin Helam Behester. In the end of the day, it covers up. It's not just God. It's a world with its definition, with its style, with its makeup. So where does it receive? It receives only from the way that Hashem is Memale, from that energy which is Memale, fills the Olam, because that Olam has a style, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu changes or reforms that original air in order to be able to flow nicely into Olam Haba. But that's all associated with the way that Hashem is removing himself from the way he is for himself, by himself, which, like we said, that's the generator, that's the Sovev Kol Almin, and becomes the Memale Kol Almin. So where does the Memale Kol Almin begin? In Olam Haba, or in Gan Eden, which is the highest, one of the highest spiritual worlds is Gan Eden. In Gan Eden itself, Gan Eden Tachtun, Gan Eden Elyon, these are very lofty areas. But that's their energy they receive after Hashem removes himself from the way he's for himself and by himself, from the state of Sovev Kol Almin, and it becomes Memale Kol Almin, even Olam Haba, even Gan Eden Elyon. As opposed to the Torah itself, the Torah is the way the Eibush is for himself, by himself. That's the core essence of God. That is the generator. That is the Ratzon Hashem. That's Sovev Kol Almin. That's before the Eibush emanating and becoming something or dealing with something else. Can you imagine the difference of Olam Haba and a Mishnah? The difference is enormous. Olam Haba, as much as exciting as it is, it's just Memale Kol Almin, the way the Eibush is dealing with a particular energy which is coming into Olam Haba, to Gan Eden rather. It's called Gan Eden. A Mishnah in this world, and they open a Mishnayos and say Shnai Mechzim Atalis, two people holding a talis, or any halach, or any piece of Gemara. If it's Gemara, it's Shulchan Aruch, it's Tanya, whatever. If it's Teda, if it's a pasuk in Teda, that is the generator itself. That's the core essence of God. That's Sovev Kol Almin. Is there any comparison? There's no comparison at all. So a Mishnah, one word in Torah in this physical world, is greater than the entire. That's what basically this is what the Mishnah says. And that Yafa Tshuva Ma'asim Tevim B'Olam Hazeh nicer than the Kol Chai Olam Haba. It's greater rather than the entire world to come. Because that's just a ziv, it's just a ray of the core essence, it's just the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu limits himself, while a Mishnah is HaKadosh Baruch Hu bichvadav atzmo, by himself, for himself, without dealing with something else. That's the core essence of God. So when we learn a Mishnah, we connect to a level of God, or rather, we connect to levels, core levels of God. We connect to the essence of God. While the whole experience of Olam Haba, the whole experience of Gan Eden is just the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu extends himself for something to do something else. Memali, part of the Memali Kolalmin energy, as opposed to a Mishnah. Any word in Torah is the Sevav Kolalmin energy. So let's see it inside. That's like the generator which cannot come in within world. It only vitalizes and it only illuminates in a way of makif, as an encompassing force. Like the generator, it's out of the city, it doesn't get involved in the details of the makeup of the necessities of the city or the appliances which need and appreciate its energy. It stands out of things because it's not there yet, right, in the core level where the generator is to deal with the details of what it has to supply to. Later you have the pipes which come from the generator and eventually contract the core energy of the generator, and in order that it should be able to deal with the different appliances, each appliance according to its need. But the Sevav Kolalmin does not come into Elamis. It just stands in the way of Makif. And this level of Sevav Kolalmin, which is the core essence of God, He Amislabesh has been nefesh, this invests in the soul, Ulvusheho, not only in the soul but in the garments of the soul, the most revealed way. You can imagine what's happening in this room right now. We're connecting, we're learning Torah, we're connecting to the most deepest, not only deepest, to the way the Eivishter Hashem is by himself, for himself, the way the energy of Sevav Kolalmin, which is transcendent by definition. The whole term of Sevav Kolalmin is transcendent from dealing with any detail of creation, may it be the highest and most refined part of creation, like Gan Eden. The whole Gan Eden is in comparison to this, the Torah we're learning right now, or again any part of Torah, is so small and minutia and insignificant. It's a total different level. And this is all b'chinas gilui mamosh, in a way that it's revealed when you learn Torah. Now the question comes, if that's the case, what's happening, for example, in this room, that we're all connecting to the core essence of God. The question is, why don't we all consume into the infinite of God? When the person opens a Mishnah, or right now in this class, we're learning Torah. Why don't we all consume? Maybe you feel that you're being consumed into the infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because we're touching core essence. It's like, for example, go put your hand into the generator. You'll probably become part of the generator because it's so powerful. You would consume into it, or you burn up into it. So the question is, if this is what's happening when a person learns Torah, that it connects to the most core essence, deep core essence of God. So why don't we consume into the infinite? Why don't we consume into the infinity of God? How could it remain intact a minute after we're learning the Torah? And the answer is, it's not because it's not happening, it's because you happen not to see it. It's not because it's not there. For example, take a home and there's millions of dollars on the table. Literally, millions of dollars of cash on the table. But you're blindfolded. Someone put something over your eyes. Or it's dark in the room. So you go in, you go out, you didn't touch the $1 million because you don't even know where it is. You don't know that it exists. Or even if you know, you don't know where to find it. So you go in the same way you're going out. Does that change the fact? It has changed by one iota the fact that there's millions of dollars on that table. Doesn't change the fact at all. There is millions of dollars on that table.
But in that example you gave, the one who came in had no benefit whatsoever from the human.
He doesn't have, right. Wait, let me finish. If someone gives him the keys to the house, this is yours. He does have benefit. He's essentially worth millions of dollars. Or, for example, another example which is probably given: take a child which just inherited his father. Rahman, God forbid, died. His father was a multi-millionaire, and the father died, and he was the only child. Which, halachically, or even by law, he is the inheritor. He is right now a multi-million-dollar kid. He's worth multi-million. He's a multi-millionaire. This little boy. but he has no perception of it. So in this which you came back, he came in the way he came out. No, the kid is a multimillionaire. Exactly the way his father was a multimillionaire. He doesn't have a perception, doesn't have no perception of money, he doesn't have any appreciation of money. But it doesn't change the fact that by definition this kid is a multimillionaire. The same thing. When you learn Torah, you're plugging into the core essence of Hashem. In essence, you should have exploded. We should have been consumed into the infinite of Hashem. Answer, because we have a body, and the body covers up over this, kind of camouflages or blinds the truth. And we don't see it, we can't experience it with our own eyes. Similar to the child doesn't have an adequate appreciation and perception of money. We, because in this state we are in this physical world, we cannot understand or we cannot appreciate what is really transpiring when we learn Torah. So therefore we could stay, therefore we walk away and we go do the other things after we learn Torah. Or even as we learn Torah, we don't feel, to some degree we feel elated and we feel elevated. There's a certain sensation of learning Torah, but we don't feel that we don't experience which is really happening, that we're connecting to the generator. But doesn't mean because we don't see it, therefore we're experiencing it. But but it's just we don't see it. We're not conscious. We're not adequately conscious of it, of what's really happening. And he's going to say perhaps because again, everyone, based on how much he refined his body, how much he refined the physical dimension of himself. For that matter, it says the Aves Avraham Yitzchak, it says Ro Elam B'chayim. Okay, it says Ro Elam B'chayim. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. When they learned Torah, it says they were able to really experience what was really happening, because they were so refined. It was like a child, we said the child, after he grows up, becomes 10, 15, 20, starts appreciating money, then he realizes, when I was a multimillionaire 20 years ago, now this is for real, I can appreciate it. He knew he was a multimillionaire. But as he grows up and he matures, then he realizes he can appreciate what it's all about. Similarly, for example, it says great tzaddikim, and great sages, it says Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, it says Ro'ei Lama B'chem, they were able to experience their godly connection even in this physical world. Why? Because the whole reason why the person doesn't feel what is really happening and transpiring is because the crassness and the coarseness of his body, which doesn't allow the light and the purity of the Torah and the light of Torah to come through, to pervade, to penetrate, because there's something holding it back. However, the great sages or the great tzaddikim starting from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they refined their bodies, so their bodies were a vessel and a container to the godly experience. So they were able to be there and feel it and so on. And in the same thing, for that matter, not everybody can say clearly that he'll reach that level, even though there's a medrash which says a person should always say, when is my actions going to come like to the actions of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? But we can't say that it's 1, 2, 3 or something which can happen so easily. But one thing is clear: the more we refine ourselves, the more we make sure that our bodies are maintain a certain health and a certain purity, obviously a spiritual purity associated with spirituality and godliness, and we're less indulgent in the physical. Our bodies become refined, and we could appreciate, even as we learn Torah, a certain sense of true elevation. But in the overall, what he's saying over here, even if you don't see it, but it's happening, and that's what he continues. Even though you, the learner of the Torah, doesn't see it, nonetheless it's still happening. And he says, and therefore we can tolerate, therefore we could still be normal or stay intact. I don't know what the definition of normal, obviously. If you think about it conceptually, truly in this context, being normal is, being consumed into the godly light would be the most normal thing over here. But it means to say that we're able to stay intact and go on and live a life down here in this physical world. It's all, and again, this is the purpose, that we don't physically burn into something spiritual, like Nadav Avihu, for example, the children of Aharon, for example, they themselves they appreciated so much.
When they one of the Parshas, sons of Aaron, when they brought this sacrifice of their own, fire came down and they consumed them, and they went up.
But it wasn't so much only the fire coming down. They appreciated being consumed into the infinite.
They were on the such spiritual level.
Exactly. Their bodies weren't holding them back because their bodies were so refined. But But they didn't. But ultimately, that's not the purpose. The purpose is to stay intact.
So in fact, that what happened that was not said. That
it was something very special, but it wasn't aligned with the ultimate intention. The ultimate intention, we should be able to live and continue to put on. If the one mission we'll learn will burn into the infinite, the next day we can't put on film because we had the person who's expired already.
He can't
put up a mezuzah, and he can't do all the mitzvahs. And Hashem wants us to be in this physical world, and that's what He says, Mishum hachi yachal lizbel, because you mishum delei chazi, because you don't see. Because you don't see what's really happening. Therefore, you can tolerate it. It's like somebody who just found out. They say someone who wins the lottery. Sometimes they take him to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, maybe just to feed him in. The moment you say, "Oh, you won. You're worth $50 million," as an example, something can go wrong, right?
You have to bring that kind of news.
So you got it.
They want $1 million. That, you know what? $2 million.
Whatever. In other words, they feed it to him. And then similarly, he says, "Mishum yachi yachal lizbel, mishum delechazi." You don't see what's really going on, and the same thing in the life of the child. The reason why he could live as a child and play with his toys is because he doesn't understand that he's worth multi-million now. So he does the same thing like all the other kids do, because the lechazi. And similarly, we are children. In other words, we're doing all the other things because we don't see. Therefore, we can tolerate, we could comprehend this great light. Not because we have such broad containers, quite on the contrary, because we don't see it, therefore we could tolerate it. As opposed to in the spirits, right, in the supernal worlds, where for example, there's more godly revelation, not excitement, revelation. It's not the core essence of God, but it's more of a revelation. And because it's a revelation of God, therefore the tzaddikim, those who sit in Gan Eden, they kind of burn into this great revelation. It's still not the core essence, by the way. As we just said before, their whole energy comes from Memalik Kolami, because it's a particular world. It's not God the way He's formed. So by Himself, the way God becomes a creator and deals with something inferior, which is even the world of Gan Eden in comparison to God, is also inferior. But the virtue of Gan Eden is that everything stands, the light's open, in the example we gave. Tzaddikim are mature.
Our goal is to be in Gan Eden.
What?
Our goal is to be in Gan Eden.
Quite on the contrary. Quite on the contrary. After you learn this, how could you say something like this? We got to start all over again.
No, not that our goal, but
how could you say that?
Gan Eden.
People talk about it that way, but the Alter Rebbe explains us quite on the contrary. The 1,000 years in Gan Eden doesn't come close to learning one Mishnah down here in this world. It's based on the Mishnah. The Mishnah says the greatest pleasures in the world to come is insignificant in comparison to tshuva masim tovim ba'olam hazeh, in this physical world. What is the meaning? Now we can understand.
Yet it says one moment.
Because here in the Mishnah you're connecting to the core essence of God.
But we don't sense.
So you don't sense, like we said before. The merchant, from a certain perspective and point of view, could feel much more relaxed and much more filling, not so much filling, but more relaxed in his hotel room. More than going in the alleyway making the deal. It's more tense and it's not as clean, it's not as pleasant, but that's where the goal is, that's where the objective is. So where is the importance? The importance is not sitting in a hotel room. And how do I know it's not the importance? Because if this merchant would be coming to him in New York, for example, he would not go to this beautiful hotel room because he doesn't care about the hotel room so much. It's comfortable. It may be more comfortable than doing the deal, but the deal is is the goal. The deal is the objective. The deal is the focus. And the same thing, the Mishnah. It's not so much revelation. It's like multi-million dollars on the table in a dark room, as opposed to someone's giving someone $10 where you can see it. So he's going to say, well, here I appreciate it more. Sure, you appreciate it more because you could see it. You could buy yourself an ice cream as an example, or a piece of bread, and here the lights were off. So you didn't see the multi-million-dollar was sitting on the table, and the key was in your hand. So if you're looking at revelation, obviously you appreciate the $10 more. You're looking what truly is. Any comparison? And the same thing, when the child is just born and just inherited the multi-million-dollars from his father, he's a multi-millionaire. Is the child excited about it? Not at all. Give a child a lollipop. One lollipop.
Determination.
And he's excited. He's running. And how many lollipops could you buy with the multi-million-dollars which you billions of lollipops, let's say. But he's not excited about the fact he's a multi-millionaire. What is he excited about a lollipop? Because it tastes good, it's sweet. And that's the difference. Gan Eden is sweet. And it's about revelation, like it says, Mashen Gebel Yenim, in the supreme world, the light is on. And therefore the neshamas could appreciate it. And it says that the neshamas kind of, in a sense, burn into the godly experience. That's what it says. Even it says one neshama even is burnt from the revelation when Hashem reveals himself to his fellow friend. Because Hashem reveals himself, each one according to how much he accomplished. Or, for example, the famous the Malachim. One of Malachim, a group of Malachim are called Srafim. Right? We say in davening, the Srafim B'chayis HaKodesh. So it says why are they called Srafim? It says because they're so excited about the godly revelation they experience, they burn into that experience. That's why they're called Srafim, Lashon Srifa. So that's the lollipop. It's sweet for them. But where is the core essence? Where is the generator? Where is the core essence? In the Mishnah. Can't see it. And that's where we can stay intact. Like it says, because you can't see it, you can tolerate it, you can stay intact, you can go on and go to sleep and wake up in the morning. And again, that's the purpose to be here, to put on tefillin and have a mezuzah and do all the good things. But in the end of the day, you're connecting with core essence levels, levels of core essence of God, as opposed to something which might be a little more exciting, but it's not the core essence of God. Like in the example, a little child, which is right now categorically a multi-millionaire, and appreciates a little red lollipop. So the red lollipop is like Gan Eden, because that's about revelation, what we can appreciate, the sweetness of Gan Eden. But where is the multi-million-dollars and this is just an example. It's something much greater than the difference of multi-million-dollars to a little lollipop. Because this is still physical and so on, while this is the core essence of God, and this is just a mere extension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the only thing is there, it's Bel Yenim, it's revealed, so there's more excitement. But here, like we say, in the hotel room, there could be more excitement. But here is where the core essence is all about, is rather present. So when we learn Open a Mishnah, we're connecting to the deepest levels of God, or God the way He's for Himself by Himself, which in the terms of here is Seviv Kolam, as opposed to Mimali Kolam, that's a step lower. That's only an extension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which this extension creates and vivifies and vitalizes and gives the energy to everything, all worlds, including Gan Eden, including the most superior world. So you can imagine. So there's no comparison of difference. So that's why we have to. So in conclusion, we have to understand how precious it is to do a mitzvah, which we connect ourselves also to the limbs of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But namely, and in this case, as we learned in the previous weeks, namely to learn Torah. How precious it is to learn Torah. You learn a Mishnah, you learn Gemara, you're the highest union, or the most deepest union, with you and the Creator, and the deepest part of the Creator uniting again with the deepest part of the Creator is precisely when you learn Torah.